Welcome to the No Rain, No Rainbows podcast. This is a show about pushing through obstacles and hard times in order to live a happy and fulfilled life. I'm your host, Ted Phaeton, and it's a pleasure to have you joining us. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Let's grow. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the No Rain, No Rainbows podcast. As always, shout out to my executive producer, Andre Suttles with Subtle Solutions, helping make this podcast possible. We have a great episode in store for you today. I am excited for this one, and many would say it's long overdue. My man, Vin D'Amato in the Zoom call. Vin, from the West Coast, the coast we love the most. How you doing?
Doing well. I'm doing well. Just got out here last week. Still moving in, getting settled. It's an uphill battle, but you know, we're working through it. A lot to do every day.
I'm sure, man. And for the folks that don't know, the viewers, the listeners, from New York to LA, just moved out there. We spent some time together in New York. We go way back.
Yes, sir.
For the listeners who might not have been introduced to you before, why not introduce yourself really quick? Let them know who you are and what it is you do.
Sure. My name is Vin D'Amato, and I am a producer, musician, and engineer, audio engineer.
Nice. And I think you are starting to really kind of get some traction in that game, in that aspect, hence why you're going out to the West Coast. Why did you pick LA?
Well, to be honest, it was a half and half decision, I guess. But a big part of it was my fiance is from San Jose, so she's like an hour south of San Francisco, and she went to UCLA for undergrad. So I think part of the move was always in the cards to come out here.
Mm-hmm.
And she got a great promotion, and her new territory is SoCal. So I have been out here in 2016 for a year, and it was kind of also always in the cards for me as well. So we kind of thinking, you know what, this might be the opportunity time to make the move, because if we don't do it now, we'll never do it. So I have a lot of friends out here. I have a lot of collaborators out here, and I'm happy we pulled the trigger this year. It's gonna be nice. The weather has been pretty good so far.
Well, I know because you mentioned back in 2016 you were in New York, in LA, excuse me,
Yes.
And then you came back to New York. And I remember we were talking and comparing the two. And I know you're a New York boy, right? You're like,
through and through.
Yeah. What's the biggest difference you notice between the two coasts?
So I think the pace of everything. So from the people to the lifestyle, the pace is just a little. Everything is a beat slower, like walking or driving. Or although LA drivers are a little insane, but it's a different insane than New York. It's just everything is like a little less intense. It feels like time moves a little slower out here, if that makes any sense. You know, growing up in New York, everything is just like go, 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 go. Everybody's very aggressive in some ways, which has this energy to it. You know what I mean? And that energy for me was always like translated into work ethic. It's like a driving force, competition. And LA is like a little bit of a departure from that. It's like a little slower, a little friendlier, a little less in your face. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest difference for me, is like this overall life pace that kind of you get to take a step back and take a deep breath, you know?
Yeah. And I asked that intentionally because I did feel that was going to be a similar kind of response as to when we were talking back then with the reflection of it.
Sure.
How do you think the fast pace, work ethic, focus of New York helps you in this new environment, especially in a very competitive field? You mentioned, production, audio engineering. There's a lot of folks in that field who really try and get into it and quite frankly might not make it. How do you think those skills and that upbringing in New York help you in that environment?
I think it sets you apart from people pretty early on. I think, interestingly enough, two of my bigger assets as a producer, musician, and engineer are, I actually, out of college, I worked 9 to 5 for 4-ish years. And I think having that and been in New York for that time brings something a little different to the table than you would see in most people in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
So having that bit of professionalism, having that drive, that ethic, kind of it lends itself to people having a little more confidence in you that you're going to get something done. Yes, music. Like I'm very much into the spiritual aspect of it, like the art of the song and good vibes, and everybody has to be in the right environment and the right mindset to create and to create well. I absolutely believe all that, but I also think there's something to having a to-do list and knocking it out and being professional over email and knowing how to communicate. Like those are assets of mine that I think were given to me being growing up in New York and like I said, having like a job out of school.
Yeah, and I can 100% relate because we learn that there's levels to this and there's different aspects to it, and there's the artist side and then the professional side, and you have to kind of marry the two. I used to work at a law firm when I was in New York, and it was the same go, 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 and detail oriented, filling out Excel spreadsheets and stuff. And then now being in my realm, in the media world, and being able to be more off the cuff, looser, there's skills and benefit in that. But where I've set myself apart was my attention to detail, was my
Sure.
professionalism, was my email and my correspondence and the interactions on the back end that people kind of get surprised about because they're like, oh, wow, I didn't expect that from you. And that's kind of I guess the extra edge that we can add and apply to ourselves. And now I'm talking to the listeners, I'm talking to the viewers on YouTube. When
Right.
we have those multiple assets and those multiple features about us, that makes us marketable to an employer or makes us marketable to our client. Because I know a lot of the listeners, they're self-made or they're ambitious of owning their own thing. When we have those skills, we could be marketable to other people. I want to jump into the process though of making music, because I
Sure.
remember when we were back in New York at your apartment, you had this box and it had these metal kind of like prongs on them, and you hit one prong and you kind of went into detail on like how hitting the prong or hitting the stick on the desk, changing the pitch and then repeating it and
Yeah.
then putting it onto a beat. I was blown away by that process. So like,
I still
what is
have
that?
I still have that marimba actually. It's over here somewhere. I brought it
Really?
with me. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I think in general everybody's process is very different. And I think kind of tying into what you were saying that like what makes you an asset or the things that you bring to the table kind of like are similar to how you would go about creating. Like you have to play to your strengths. Over time, back in New York, I actually didn't play guitar at all. And now I consider myself a fairly, you know, average guitar player. I can get by, especially in my productions. But there are things that back in New York, if I wasn't that good of a guitar player, I would do things like sample the marimba or play the wood block, or and I was doing those things, I guess more or less because I wanted to bring, in general in my productions and in the music I like organic, to bring as many organic elements as possible. Primarily music production now in 2020 is in the box, right? And in the box, I mean, people are making hits, top 40 hits, millions of record sales on their laptop, right? And that's all you need. You don't need anything else. You literally can make a song. I think even like, no joke, my buddy has like a Tesla and he has like a beat making app in the Tesla. Like you can make music anywhere now. It's not hard, on your phone, everywhere. So everybody's process is different. I think for me, having organic elements is important. People generally are attracted to those organic elements. So when you can get them in, try to get them in, and see if they work. I do a lot of drums particularly. I like to have things kind of not be so rigid and
Yeah.
and kind of on the nose. I like having a little bit of a groove. And sometimes the only way to get that is to play something. So whether it be whatever you have in front of you, even just like hitting your desk or whatever, like for the kick drum, like there's so many ways you could beatbox into the mic, right? There's just infinite ways to be creative and to generate sound. So it's finding what works for you.
Where does your love of music come from? Because when we talk, man, like your love goes deep. it goes deep. And I know there's a lot of folks who kind of get into music to make the beat and stuff. But
Sure.
in the genres that you listen to, I mean, we'd be there and you're pulling out records and putting the needle on and we're getting some good vibes going. Where does
Yeah.
that love come from?
Well, I think initially, my parents are both musicians, or were. My mom still sings, but my dad hasn't played in a long time. But I think initially I grew up in a super musical household. My parents played in a band up until I was probably 10, maybe, or 11.
Wow.
So they played for a while growing up. Um, so I think initially it's that, right? And then there's something hereditary in the blood that attracted me and makes me feel something. But yeah, I have, it's a weird relationship because I think sometimes like people listen to, like, sometimes I can't listen to music. It's weird.
Really?
Yeah. So like sometimes I'm in a mood that I physically just can't listen to music because it's so tied to me, like, emotionally and mentally, that like sometimes I just need to listen to a podcast. You know what I mean? Like I can't hear sound because the way I process it is just so agonizing. Like everything that flows through me is like somehow, subconsciously kind of repurposed and like has a place somewhere. And
Yeah.
sometimes I just can't palate it. I just can't like, emotionally like accept listening to music. So sometimes I go like on drives or something, I won't play. I'll just play like a series of podcasts, or like even like an audiobook or something.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah, I
can
think,
relate to that.
right. I can imagine. I'm sure there needs to be some sort of like separation from what you do in order to still love it and appreciate it. It can't be, when you're so close to something. I think it's super important to also take steps away.
Yeah. It's almost like sometimes when you take steps away, that's where the inspiration comes from. Because I mean, if I go to a new city and I see the local newscast or whatnot, or even when I watch the news, like I can't watch news like a normal person. I just can't.
Well, so
Because
I
I'm
was
in
gonna ask you
it.
so do you look at other, so the nuance, it's the new, I'm sure there's like so many nuances, right? There's so many things that I would have no idea even to look for. When you do see other newscasters and other channels, are you constantly thinking like, either for better or for worse, drawing inspiration from, and or also thinking like, wow,
Yeah.
they're not doing this correctly, or this guy missed, and etc.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
If I'm watching a newscast, I'll take notes. I'll take mental notes for the things that they do good. I'm like, "Ooh, I gotta adopt that," or "That was great," or something
Sure.
that they do bad. I was like, "Ooh," and it's it's always a learning experience. Like Jess, one day she pulled up YouTube, and I know a lot of folks might have seen those news blooper montages.
Yes.
I
Yes.
don't like those because
Okay.
it's like I don't want that in my area because
Cringy.
like
You don't want to even like, you don't even want it on your radar. Like you don't want to have that in your head at all.
yeah, because I believe in karma, and if if we're playing all these news bloopers, I'm bound to be on one of them. Then
Sure. Sure. That's a scary thought, dude. I never thought about that. Wow.
exactly,
Okay.
it's kind of like why I also can't watch like those gym fail videos. Like, no, I don't want to see that.
Oh,
I get
no. Yeah. Yeah.
queasy.
Yeah.
So
Same.
so for that, I'm like, okay, if I see news, I'm not watching it like the normal person. I'm watching it from a perspective of how would I do this? How would I produce this? Or how would I deliver the story that they're delivering? And because of that, it does probably what you feel for music. It takes I guess, the joy or the entertainment or the information aspect out of watching said production.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well,
That's probably what happens with music.
you're no longer a civilian when you're watching newscasts. You are a different from for me. When I watch newscasts, I'm not picking apart the production or how the caster is speaking, any of that. It's the same thing. So maybe like musically, when someone else like, is listening to it, like you said, exactly, I'm picking it apart, I'm taking something from that, and sometimes I just don't feel like doing that. So you completely relate. You
Yeah.
completely understand.
What's the biggest challenges you've had to overcome in this journey so far, man? Because I mean, I know how competitive the industry is. I know how up and down the industry is.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest, I guess, hits you've taken along the way that you're proud you've been able to brush off?
So this is a tough question. I think it's always going to be an uphill battle. And for me personally, like enough is never enough, right? I'm always going to want more. I'm always going to want to get to the next level. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that is also a detriment as well as a huge, positive to the whole experience and the journey. But I'll tell you what, I think the thing that I have to overcome all the time on a daily basis is really no one other than myself and my ego and my mental or emotional state, dude. Like to be honest, that's the hurdle that I find toughest to get over more frequently. Like
Mm-hmm.
yes it's hard to break through, right? Yes, it's hard to financially be in a good spot through music, or in the industry through engineering, etc. Yes, that's very tough. But I think there's really more of a roadmap to those things than just being able to sit down and create and not think about all of the other people, all of the other things going on. And like, I spoke about this recently too. Instagram is awful for creativity. I don't think it breeds creativity at all. Actually, it probably hinders me so much because you're constantly like just watching other people release music. You're constantly watching other people play music, and it's kind of this highlight reel of like everything that you got going on in music in your life. So for me, like the biggest obstacle, and I'd imagine will continue to be the biggest obstacle, is just like getting over that and tuning it out and focusing and putting the blinders on, if you will, to just keep steadfast straight and keep working, because I do think on some level it's a battle of attrition. And I don't know if you feel the same way in your industry. It might not be the same thing. But if you stick this out, you
all the time. I mean, because
okay,
you see people who are the best at what they do, right?
sure.
And because they're quote unquote the best at what they do, or sometimes I've heard the most talented don't always make it, but you see these highlight reels like you mentioned, and they're so smooth, put together, on point. And then you compare what you're doing to that, not taking into consideration the equipment that they're working with, the team that they're working with, the backing that they have, the money that they're pouring into the production. And it's just one of those things where, for example, we were talking about a shoot, and my friend, my videographer, pulls up the ASAP Rocky music video, ASAP Forever, whatnot.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with the music video, but there's
I
some
think I might be, yeah.
wild transitions on it. Like he's in a street and the camera goes all the way around him and then into the street, and then he's on a beach, and it's just these wild transitions.
Right.
And our
Right.
friend looks at our videographer's like, "Can you do that?" He's like, "If you got $20,000 to give me, I can do that."
Sure.
But once we start comparing our chapter 5 with someone's chapter 30, we start putting ourselves down. We start thinking, "Oh man, I can never do something like that." And that ends up paralyzing us in where we are.
Yep.
And I've seen that plenty of times. I mean, in my industry, I mean, I've listened to podcasts where I'm like, man, they're so good. I've watched newscasts where I'm like, that dude was so smooth, or that
Right.
lady just handled it. And at the end of the day, I probably need more at bats. I probably don't have the same team behind me that they do. And I mean, it's a hard thing to be. It's a hard place to be, especially when you're scrolling through Instagram and you're surrounded by it.
Right. I think the key and the takeaway for that is that you can only judge your improvement and where you are in the journey to where you were, and specifically just you personally, right? So if you were better today than you were yesterday, that's important. That's a plus. That's something to be happy about and to be celebrated. And you have to just look at it that way, and you can't compare yourself to other people, like for all the things you just said. Absolutely.
Yeah. What are some of the goals you have like right now in terms of your music?
I want to get to a place where I am so in my head, I think I have these sort of categories, right? And I really enjoy making music as like an artist, in a project, and trying to garner a fan base and have people enjoy what we're putting out.
Mhm.
But there's also a part of me that I think really wants to be um, successful in a way where I'm just kind of separating myself, taking myself out of that artist um, POV and in that position, and really focusing on just making music for other people. So I think a big part of this LA move is to jump into that more and to kind of just be kind of like pro at like producing music for other people and really getting clinical about my skills and getting it like at bats is like it's such a great analogy, like such a great way to put it, right? Like I just need more at bats in certain rooms and to take those shots in order to get better and get to the place where I really want to be, which is to be prolific in the sense that, oh, this guy makes great music. Let's work with him. That's really my goal. My goal is like not necessarily to be so successful as an artist or to push a project to a certain place, which I would love to do as well, because I do think I have something to say or still have something to say. I really do enjoy, but I also really enjoy that aspect, like having people come to me and just be like, hey, we want to make this record. You know, maybe it's country or something, you know, my forte is not necessarily country, but being able to have the skill set to produce all genres and for all artists is something that I'm really looking forward to diving into and getting better at.
Yeah. And I say that setting up this next question in terms of what do you think comes first, the skill set to do the project or the opportunity to do the project and gain the skill set?
It's a really interesting question. So I what's so interesting about this is that I have a lot of friends. So my thought process is like, I need to be prepared. Like I need to like prep. Like if I can't play something well enough, or if I don't have something to walk in there with, if I'm not ready for the job, I freak out. But I have friends, very close people to me, who will just be like, they'll get a call and they'll be like, yeah, can you do this? And it'll be like, yo, I've never done this before in my life, but I'm going to go. I'll be like, what? Like how? And you know what? More often than not, they're just throwing themselves into a position to be successful, and you kind of roll the dice. Like if you succeed, you succeed. And I'll tell you what, if you walk in the room and you don't, it's, I guess to some extent, it's still a learning experience. I can't imagine it shooting yourself in the foot to a point where they wouldn't hire you back if you down the road in the future. Right.
Yeah.
So I need to adopt more of that mentality. Maybe I'm not ready, you know, maybe I'm not, maybe I don't have the skill set, or I'm not good enough, or whether or not I think I'm good enough. Like I got to do it. You got to jump. Sometimes you got to take that leap. So that's a very good question. I think more often than not, I should probably jump first and figure it out after. I think that would probably be some advice, you know, is not, maybe not all the time, cause that's kind of crazy, but every now and then jump and then see where you land. And sometimes people land on their feet and have great success stories surrounding that.
I asked that too, because for some, it takes somebody else seeing your capabilities before you could see it. I think we are our biggest critics. And, you know, when I was working as a meteorologist, I was just doing my thing. And when my news director was talking about, hey, potentially anchoring, I was floored and I was scared and I was very ill prepared in my mind to do.
So did you have any becoming, when you were a meteorologist, was there ever a thought, were you ever like positioning yourself to be, and like, was it ever like putting it into the universe? You know how they talk about like the
absolutely not.
You didn't. Okay. Wow. Okay.
So I remember sitting in a room with other people higher up in the industry, and they've said, I could see you on the anchor desk. And I'm sitting there like, that's not for me. Sure. Honestly, I was just like, I never thought that was in my cards. That was not the direction. I'm like, I'm the weatherman. I'm going to be the weatherman. That's where I'm at. But when the opportunity to anchor came up, it literally scared me so much that I said yes. It scared me so much that I was like, let's do it. And that was a situation I had to build my wings on the way down. And, you know, I hit the side of that cliff a few times. I got roughed up. I got beat up.
Sure.
But, you know, I think I'm gliding now. I'm not going to say I'm soaring. I'm not flying. I'm gliding. You know, I'm airborne, and I haven't fallen yet.
I think that you being self-aware, knowing that you got roughed up, hit the side of the cliff a couple of times, and you are not, I think there's something to that, right? Like you said, you're not soaring. Some people would say in your position that you're soaring. You know what I mean? But I think it's really important that you said it right. You said it that I am flying. I'm not soaring. I took my licks on the way up, but I'm in a good spot now. And leaving that room at the top, I think, to me, is really important. I think that really separates a lot of people, because you have to be self-aware. Otherwise, you'll never get better, and you'll never have anywhere to go up. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You'll always think you're where you're supposed to be, and maybe you are where you're supposed to be. But having that hunger, to take it to the next level, is really important. And I think that has is built in the fiber of a lot of successful people.
Yeah, and I think that's where we are similar. I mean, that's why we've gotten along for so long, is because of, some would say it's humility, some would say it's self-awareness. I also think, like you said, enough is never enough. It's ambition, where a lot of people in your position might already be like, I've arrived, I
Yeah.
made it,
Oh,
I'm making a
not
living
my
doing what I'm doing.
sure.
I was just playing, some of your music videos on YouTube before. Curves is stuck in my head now. Uh, but
Thank you.
like, a lot of people look at those different positions and think, yeah, we're good. We've made it.
Yeah.
But that ambition about us, that work ethic, and I guess wanting more is what kind of keeps that level of, I'm not soaring yet, because there's so much more that I want to do. I'd say, though, along the way, how important is it to appreciate what you have before you get what it is you want?
You ask a lot of good questions. So I think something that I don't do. This is personal. I don't celebrate my wins as often as I should. And luckily, my fiance, Lynn, really does a great job of kind of reminding me. Like, she'll be like, "Listen, like, this is good, or this is something that we should be celebrating." And I think that is very important along the way. There's a lot of peaks and valleys, especially in things that we do. And I think if you can stop and take a second and enjoy the peaks, the valleys don't seem all that bad. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So I do recommend stopping and celebrating your wins. You don't have to have like, every time you hit a milestone, you don't have to like have a party, but like maybe just acknowledging and being grateful for that, just for yourself,
Yeah.
or even just getting a few friends together and then grabbing, some dinner or something, and be like, hey, like, this is important to me. I'm very happy that I've gotten to this point. Is very important, and it's something that I am actually working on at the moment,
You and me
to do
both.
more often. I mean, listen, dude, like you said, I cut from the same cloth. Like, I'm not necessarily, it's not that I'm happy. I'm not happy about these wins, or things that are positive in my life. It's more or less that I'm just always so hungry that I want more, dude. Like, it's never enough. Like, yeah, this is great. Cool. What's next? But it's important for us to really step back and be like, hey, listen, like, this is really cool. Like, this is like, I'm sure with this podcast, like, and the YouTube, like, you're gonna gain a lot of milestones along the way with followers and your audience. And it's definitely going to be important for you to take a step back and be like, hey, like, I built this. Now we're here. And wait, now we're here. You know what I mean? It's like, you have to really recognize that.
It's funny
You deserve it.
because it might be the New York in us, but I just put out the 100th episode of this podcast, right?
Big
And
milestone.
it was, and I was proud of it, and I was very proud of it. But kind of like you, my fiance Jess was like, "Babe, this is huge." I was
Yep.
like, "Yeah, it's cool,"
Right.
because I'm already thinking of my next 100 and the next
Sure.
100, and like you, I had to stop, appreciate the milestone, and take it in, and look back and say, okay, wow, an episode a week for 100 weeks in a row. It's almost 2 years. 4 weeks shy of 2 years. Actually, this is going to be episode 104. So this is like the 2-year mark when this comes out. And at the end of the day, that is an accomplishment in itself, and it's important to celebrate that.
Absolutely.
But I think maybe the
Absolutely.
New York in us is what keeps us hungry, because every time I feel like I've arrived, every time I feel like I've made it, I get in New York and I get humbled instantly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Instantly.
Yep. It's if you get, what is the saying? Like, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. I mean,
Yeah.
New York, there is something so real about that energy. It's physical almost, right? It's like you can touch it. Like, when you're there, it's just such a different. That's why moving out here. I'll probably miss that the most. Right. When you get back to New York, when you go back, you feel it too. I'm sure. Like you're like,
Oh yeah.
there's something about it. You know what I mean? And it's just not the same anywhere else. So.
And I did say that on a previous podcast, and I'm not trying to bad talk South Carolina or LA or any other city, because there's
No,
hustlers
of
in
course
every
not. Of
city.
course not.
You know, I think it's I mean, it's blatantly in your face in New York of the amount of hustle that's going on, and you can't go 5 steps without feeling or seeing it, man.
Right. Right.
How
Yeah.
can folks connect with some of the work that you're doing, follow your stuff, and I want to give them an opportunity to hear your work that you've been working so hard on, man.
Sure. So the project that I've been spending the most time on over the past 3 years is Rev, REVV, and that's with my buddy Rocco. That's pretty much Rev the Band on pretty much all platforms.
Mm-hmm.
Spotify, REVV. We have a website, revtheband.com. And then personally, you can follow me. I guess the best place would probably be Instagram, which is just at I am Vindamato. But I'll eventually get like a better way to start cataloging my productions
Yeah,
along the way. So
definitely, man. And I'm excited to see your growth. I'm excited to see all the rainbows that are heading your way. And I know you're working on them. I think LA is going to be a good move, man. I think there's a lot of fertile soil around you.
I hope. I'm exactly all of the things we talked about. I'm gonna work hard, keep my head down, and do the best I can, and hopefully something comes of it, and continue to build on some of the momentum that we had coming back from New York.
Absolutely, man. And if ever you need that boost, you know where to go, right?
Hey, listen, we gotta hang. We gotta figure something out. I don't know if you're over on the West Coast, or maybe I'll get down to you, but we gotta figure something out. It's been too long. I know I didn't get to see you last fall. Usually that's when we kind of see each other.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to figure something out.
Our Friendsgiving meal,
Yeah,
man.
right.
That
That
sauce.
you were day one. That thing is still going, and you were a part of that from the beginning. So it's something
Yeah.
that I hope we can continue.
I'm going to try doing that again this November, planning to go up and see family, see everybody. Of course, among this pandemic, travel's been limited, but definitely, man, I'd love to link up sometime soon, and we'll continue to push each other to that next level.
Yeah, let's keep in touch. Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on. I know you've had some very prestigious guests, and I'm very appreciative for the opportunity. So thank you.
You're right there with all of them, man. I appreciate you being on there.
Thank you. High praise. Thank you so much.
High praise. That's your humility coming out. Appreciate it, man. Thanks so much. And of course, as always, to the listeners, we appreciate you rocking with us to the end. Man, just going back to some of the things that Vin said, if we don't do it now, we'll never do it. That was something you guys got to take with you, because a lot of us right now are sitting in the middle of a pandemic, and we're probably sitting on an idea. We're probably sitting on that side hustle. Maybe some of you are at home looking at the keyboard, waiting to create music. If you don't do it now, you won't do it, and have to play to our strengths. I love the fact how Vin was mentioning hitting the desk or whatnot. Those are organic elements that you bring into the music. If you're not the best guitar player, you're not the best drummer, use what you have around you to still get those elements. And as he said, nowadays you can make music in just about anything. And enough is never enough, man. Then I know you're hungry. I'm hungry. We're going to be eating pasta because we love ourselves some Italian food, ravioli. And I'm a penne alla vodka guy. But you got to be hungry. Les Brown says it all the time. You got to be hungry. You have to be hungry. That's my Les Brown impression. And if you ever think that you might not be ready for that project that somebody's asking you to do, maybe consider taking that jump and build the wings or build the parachute on the way down. Vin and I are both working on that. I've done it. I came out on the other end okay, and I'm still doing it to this day, or I'm trying to at least. And man, celebrate the big or the little wins, because I mean, you have to along the way, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you deserve it. You owe it to yourself.
Absolutely, man. Vin, I appreciate you. Thanks for being on. And always, as we say to the listeners at the end of the episode, everybody wants the sunshine, but they don't want the rain. But you can't get the pleasure without a little pain. Let's grow.
Absolutely. I like that.
The No Rain, No Rainbows podcast is recorded at Camaraderie, a collective workspace in Greenville, South Carolina, right off the Swamp Rabbit Trail. If you're looking for a place to grow your business, network with other professionals, and establish your own workspace, Camaraderie is the place to do so.